Yeah. Good morning, St. John's, and thank you for attending. I'm John Decker, a member of the congregation, and lately I introduced myself as a retired attorney. People like the retired part. Before that, I worked for many years representing architects, engineers, construction contractors, and came to know our speaker today, Arlen Kai. He has a reputation as an outstanding architect and a recognized leader in the field of historic preservation. And Arlen has come to us to share with us the story of this structure listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and particularly about the events of 1970 and thereabouts, when the new addition was placed on the building and various renovations took place. So with that, I give you Arlen Kai.
Well, we'll see how this stands up. Trouble with being in practice for a number of years, sometimes there's a little wear and tear on the legs and feet, but good morning. How many of you remember St. John's on Second Street? How many remember that? The building? Got one? How good a shape was it in? Well, you have memory of it out there. And what I wanted to, whoops, let's back up here. Where are we at here? Where's the first, let's get our first slide. Okay, now, what I have been fascinated with, as John said, I have worked many years on existing and historic buildings. Some I restored, some I helped evolve into their next life, and every once in a while, I had one kiss a bulldozer. But things change. And how do they change? And what causes them? And you've had a great example here. Now let's give the slide a try. You have a wonderful facility here. It was put on the National Register very shortly after the 50-year age in which it would become eligible to be on the register. Why? Did you have the Treaty of Ghent signed here? No. So what are the reasons that something is put on the National Register? Something important happened there. It's a unique piece of architecture, which you are. And is it an example of unique architecture? And it is. So St. John's is on the National Register, but it also keeps changing. And that I find rather fascinating. Let's give it a try. Whoops, back. That's going pretty fast. If you look at the elements that are in here, loaded with symbolism, loaded with stylistic elements of its time. You have the acoustic, the elements that are in here. On your ceiling, you have all this texture that's up there. What looks like acoustical tile is actually what they call tectum, which in the 50s was a wonder material of sawdust and wood fiber put together in cement that became insulation, structure, and acoustical tile. All in one. Magic material. You don't see it too much anymore, but it certainly was popular in the 50s. You have the very Wrightian or John Steinman had the very horizontal, very sleek, very geometric solution to a space. And this has always been a wonderful space. Let's try again. If we're looking at what it is about a building, if you go back to Vitruvius, of course I just talked to him yesterday, but he was the one who advised Caesar Augustus on what architecture was. And using that, they turned Rome from a city of bricks to a city of marble. But it starts with function. There has to be a reason, a use. What is the use that the building is going to be for? Without that use, there's no point in having the building. You have the structure. What is the structure? It's not just the posts and the beams and the columns and the foundations that are holding this up, but it is all the walls, all the things that enclose the space, but it's how it's built. And it's full of systems. You have the electrical, great, we have the fan. You have the window systems letting in natural light as well as the artificial light. You have the systems of the heating and air conditioning, on and on, that are all part of the structure. And then you have the aesthetics, the art, the inspiration, the communication. What is that building to be used for? Okay, we're back to use. But it is communicating, it is inspiring. It is giving us the art, the delight that makes buildings we love, love. If you're looking at how do things change? We change. The numbers of people change. You have your demographics. You have the things that happen to us, around us. Whether it's the wars, fortunately, we don't have the wars that are ravaging, that have ravaged so many other continents before. But we do have tornadoes. We do have the storms. We do burn down. Yes, the crises, they're there. They're going to affect us and change us. And just the recent pandemic, you saw what it did to your own population and your own gathering of the faithful. It has a big effect. You have the changing economics. Yes, there are times that we can pay our bills. There's other times that we have to let things go because we don't have the funds to do it. You have the changing culture. You have so many different things of the, well, you can count the ways that the culture changes around you. You may not like it. You may like it, but it changes, and it's changing attitudes. Change. And the technology, I saw just the contrast up here from when, if you count this in the mid-50s, to be having the music up front, the screens in the back, technology, you're taking advantage of it. And I'm taking advantage of being klutzy. It's there. So change, change, change. The only thing constant we have is that things are going to change, and then it's how we respond to it. Let's give it another shot. What are the changes that here? In our recent history, and we can go back to when this was 1,000 feet, or several hundred feet below sea level, and this is the inland sea, and that's where we had why we have so much limestone around here, because we were once underwater. Well, times have changed. A lot of ice ages have come and gone. A lot of people came over from Asia and populated here. Evansville was a pretty popular place. I'm sure we can still find a lot of arrowheads out in the fields. The combination of very fertile fields, the water, good hunting ground, that this was, for the last 10,000 years, a very popular living space. More currently, we were the Michigan Territory. And that was the start of the Europeans coming in and taking over. And you had your mission here that things are still, mission work for the young men went out. We're still living with the indigenous history that was here, led to the Michigan Territory, led to the Black Hawk War. It was the Sauk and the Fox that were escaping. It came up through this area. Pardon? Oh, and we're looking at the Wisconsin Territory. We have our Civil War that really raised havoc within the country. We still are catching up with tremendous loss of life that happened at that time. We have the Wisconsin Territory, we have the state, we have our World Wars, we have the Cold War. That's hard to read back there. I'm going to have to read this myself. But in the 1870s, we had industrialization. There was a tremendous amount of optimism in this country. We could do anything, everything. And Evansville became quite a trade center, a manufacturing center of sorts. And the communities that we had were very pedestrian-oriented. They have changed to a very auto-centric orientation. And now and how is that affecting you? Well, let's try again. What's the next slide? Garcon? Next slide. Let's go to the groundbreaking of St. John's. This is a groundbreaking in the 1870s. Great group, and you see they already had a problem with parking. But I don't know if you can recognize any of the buildings in the background there, but I love this this was cutting edge at the time. We had broken the prairie, gathered the family of believers, and dedicating a new church. And we have, is this the St. John's that you remember? This is the St. John's you remember, which is what they call Carpentry Gothic. And it had the parsonage to the right, and you can see the Carnegie Library to the left. And there it is. Next cap. Now, small, very small, and as the congregation grew, where were we going to sit everybody? Well, they pulled out folding chairs and filled up all the aisles, much to the delight of any fireman and code officials, that all the aisles would be closed up. And of course, there were abundant of handicapped accessible entrances and exits, not. But this was the time, this was the technology, this was the taste of the time. And if you look in the middle of the floor, you will see one iron grate. As the old one-eyed furnace. So there'd be a pot-bellied stove that the good pastor or whoever the pastor could talk into going down, load up the wood stove or coal stove, and that was the heating system for that building. I'm not sure where the outhouse was. I didn't see that in the picture, but we can talk about it. Next one. If we keep on going through, St. John's Episcopal is starting to lose members. And they are talking to the Lutheran congregation in Cooksville. There was no Lutheran church in Evansville at the time. It was in Cooksville. And they were deciding to expand. And this was an opportunity as the Episcopalians were losing population. The Lutherans were gaining population, and they cut a deal to be taking over the church, which was starting to fall on hard times, low maintenance. Again, things happen. It was a long period of neglect. And as any neglect happens, watering is one of our great eroders in changing, which changes an awful lot of buildings. But let's look. There it is, announcement in the paper. St. John's is going to be renewed to its former glory by the Lutherans. And the Episcopalians, every once a month, are still going to be able to hold its service there. If we have, something's happening. World War II, we have a baby boom. We have population explosion. We have cars. We are mobile. The old cities that were walkable, there's no parking places. We're going to go out to the country, out to the burbs, out to where we can breathe and have a parking lot. Things keep on changing. A decision was made to build a new church, mid-50s. 20 years that they've been that they had started with renting the church to be trying to take it over and return it to its former glory. Tough to do when it's too small, poorly built, doesn't have the facilities. I'm sure the outhouse needed cleaning more than they wanted to do. What's wrong with that lovely church? Well, being too small, with the parsonage next door. Next. We're moving away from where all the other churches were. Church Street was named for a reason. You had four major churches downtown. 3 of them were really major. This one's going through its own changes and evolution as they have built a new church, and they're actually having this on the market for it to be selling it as a residence, but they're also using it as a gathering place in the meantime. And another grand church on the other corner, all there, all within easy walking distance, and so you had sort of a holy intersection or cross of all the Christian churches in town. You'll find the parsonage still there. But what was the glory? When it's kind of run down, too small, doesn't work, doesn't meet the expectations of the new congregation. Oh, you want heat by turning the thermostat on. Oh, how can you forego tradition? So all these things that cause you to change. We have expectations. When the church does not even meet the standards of our own home, we gotta go. And what are we going to do? We want something new. But what? Should a church look like a church? Should a church look like a church? All the people that were in the congregation, many of them were veterans who had served in World War II and were now raising families, setting up the businesses. They were home. They had seen these grand cathedrals. They had been around, some of them for 1,000 years, most of them for several hundred. Grand spaces made of stone. They're still there. And some are quite rococo. So some simple, some very elaborate. What do we want? We want something. Do we want to have something that sits on the top of the hill, inspires everybody from a far distance. Oh, even that church has its own evolution. I was very struck by this stone that was in the wall, celebrating the bombardment in 1876. Oh, if you look at the church, you'll be seeing all kinds of different color stones, as they had repaired from the bombardment of water and rain and ice and freezing. But things kept on going. The bombardment part really hit me. So, what is a church? What should a church look like? My mother, being a very traditionalist, instructed me that when, as a young architect, when you do a church, make it look like a church. That was her exhortation. Mom, what does a church look like? Again, the inspiration. We fought the war. We're now modern. We now have the things that we never had when St. John's was built in the first place. Shocking things. My grandmother was born in horse and buggy times, and she lived to see men landing on the moon. Wow. Such changes. Now, what are we going to change to? We were going through in the mid-50s, and they were recovering from the Depression. If you look at the buildings, there was a lot of construction that was going on in the 20s that stopped in 29, 30, and didn't really pick up until the mid-50s. Stopped. That meant that everything was deteriorating, being compacted. Population was growing. We're running out of room. And so that out with the old, in with the new, came urban renewal. The Bulldozer Club came out. Great swaths of our central city were bulldozed to be made into new communities, new neighborhoods. Well, that took quite a long time. What happened was that really we had a lot of people flying out to the suburbs and creating, let's see what Whitney Young called the white noose of suburbs around our inner cities. That was pretty damning. A pretty damning epitaph for to be saying to a bunch of architects in 1968. But let's just 5 blocks away, 2 to the west, 3 to the south, you were out in the country. 5 blocks. You were on the edge. So you went from this very walkable, no parking lot, location to now you're out on the edge, out in the burbs. And you have, again, the article, and this is on, it's coming down. It's going to be replaced. And that was replaced with a new post office. So the post office is now where St. John's was. Hire John Steinman. He's a character. He was very much feeling that he was the heir apparent to the Frank Lloyd Wright culture. He was developing his own style along with the Prairie School lines. And we are blessed with a number of his projects in the southern Wisconsin area. Schools, buildings, office buildings, motels, doctor's clinic out in Mount Horeb, a wide range of buildings. Trouble is, he didn't quite live as long as Frank Lloyd Wright did. And that was a key to Frank Lloyd Wright's success. He outlived his competition. He also changed with the times. He evolved his styles as well. St. John's is going to have a new church, and they're going to spend a lot of money. Count back to mid-55, when 130,000 was a lot. Houses could be bought for 5,000. Get a good one for 10. 130,000. That was a lot of money and a lot of commitment on the part of this congregation to move forward. Also a big commitment to be taking something that was so very different from the other churches. Success. Congratulations. You're not only having success in the mid-50s, you are growing. You are growing so fast. And this is where I come on the scene. I was a young architect working for a firm that was hired to be doing the addition you have to the south here. You had success. You needed educational space, classroom space, gathering space for the growing congregation. And there they are, the bright, shiny faces. Look at that confirmation class of the baby boom. They are there. With the addition, when you're designing something that's a building to try and be an addition to this structure, what do? Do you try to blend? Do you contrast? Do you have something completely new? Do you separate it so that it's not, it's a counterpoint, or is it a blend? If you're going into what was going on at the time, there was a lot of turmoil going on. Lots of things were going on at this 69, 70 time period. I think we're remembering it. A lot of turmoil. We just had a series of assassinations. We were torn apart by the Vietnam War. Civil rights, people were coming forward and saying, hey, you've left us behind. We want to be with you. And of course, all our technology left the threat of, and how many remember to, when you see the flash of light, duck under your desk and put your arm over your neck to be sheltering yourself from a nuclear explosion. Wonderful. We have a lot of things going on, including the inflation that's happening. What was my example? Something I was so struck with on this was the very horizontality of the design. Everything from the roof overhangs, the clear stories, the sweeping roof lines, and the Roman brick that you have in these walls. Roman brick. Where did that come from? It is actually something that the Romans did standardize. Yes, they had very standardization that if you're going to be building a brick, it has to be this size. So that it was decreed, and so all the brickyards made bricks this size, this thin, this long, this wide, and they built all the buildings from that. Made lovely textures, and then often they plastered it over or covered it with marble. But there was that brick. And that became a favorite of the Prairie School architects because of its horizontality. If you look at them, even the accent, they're accented with the raked joints, where it cast quite a shadow. It's not a flush joint, just that little concave one that is very weather protected. It's what they call raked. Again, accenting that horizontal line. But in 70, they stopped making Roman brick. The only way you could get Roman brick was to hire a brickyard to be making that special sized brick. And if you're going to be going down to Ohio to the brickyards and have them make that special size, one run of brick for your building, you better have a very good fundraising project going on. So what did we do? We chose as close as possible to have that very horizontal brick as far as the theme in here, but it's a Norman brick. If you look, it's thicker. Doesn't have this gracious line that you have here, but we were trying. And we didn't do too bad a job of matching the color. The roof line, the wood, we can do something about. And at the time, I was quite proud of it. I came back and I said, oh, ran out of budget. It's very plain inside. Doesn't have the great spaces, the great texture that you have here. But I tried. And I wanted to have that. Go ahead. And you continue to grow. Have the pipe organ. Is the pipe organ still working? There it is. Is it still? But here it was, shortly after you had that addition, an additional commitment, an additional investment of you, the congregation, in the congregation. What happened next? Where is this? What happened next? It's constantly, things are constantly happening. We now suddenly have to be conscious about our energy. We can't have solid brick walls anymore with no insulation in them. And I'm afraid that's what I did out there. There's not much insulation in that wall. We have a lot of things going on, including, again, you see that inflation where we had, in this case, we had very little economic growth and a great deal of inflation. And I don't know if many of you remember if you bought a home or built a home, that you had to pay the mortgage of, we started construction at maybe 13% interest on the loan, finished it, and then they had a closeout loan, and it was 19 to 21% interest rate. Yes, it happened. It was ugly, and a lot of construction stopped. But we also had our refugees come in that we brought in after the Vietnam War. And then I still remember the headlines on religious theory, is God dead? That was of that period. Very serious discussion at the time. What happened to the confirmation class? All those bright, shiny faces? We now have 1/4 as many kids in that confirmation class as we did in that previous one. Baby boom is over. Maybe the young families are moving out. They're not staying in Evansville. But there it is. Confirmation class shrink. Where are we now? Do you agree with that? Are we living in more isolated times? You are the community of believers. Community. So St. John's is an important role as building a community. But what has happened to the community? We have become more isolated, more autocentric. We're not walking to meet our neighbors. We're not talking to the person on the porch. We're inside where the air conditioning is. Who wants to be out on that porch? Mosquitoes, heat. What about your membership? Have you had your own changes in the membership? And where are they going? Just not coming like they used to? guess what? You're no longer pedestrian oriented. What used to be a 20-block radius for service, you're now 20 miles. Your neighbors being 20 minutes away instead of that 5 minutes away walking. Maybe 10 minutes if you're at the 20 blocks. So you have seen many small churches disappear. You have seen many of them just lose population. You just built a welcome center in here. And I was very glad because there was a discussion at the time as to where the entrance should be. The architect at that time had proposed to turn the entrance and have it face the parking lot. I'm glad you didn't. That you're facing the street as you should be, greeting whoever is driving by and whoever is going to be walking by. Because I think you're going to be finding that there are going to be more people moving into the inner city, and things are going to become a little more dense and a little more walkable. That is becoming a little more desirable. So when you have this facility, it is very much of a landmark here on its corner, well situated on the corner. Good choice for putting it on the corner. What next? What do you see? Because you're the planners. You're going to be making this evolve, grow, prosper, or fail into the future. What do you see, and what are you going to do about it? There's all kinds of things that are happening around here. I just had to do a detour because I came down 14 and didn't know the detour was there. Still made it here in time, but it was a detour nonetheless. But as it improves, you're on a primary corridor. That was from Minneapolis to Chicago. Highway 14 was also pretty much following the Indian Trail that went from Madison to Chicago. Yes, they had a superhighway then too. So you're following what has been a very traditional route for a long time, and that route is going to continue to feed Evansville, and is also going to suck people away. What are you going to do to attract the people? You have an advantage in that the demographics are changing in your favor. Remember, you had to go to the country. I need my house in the country. That's heaven on earth. I need my house in the country. You don't hear that as much. Yes, I love my house in the country, but it's also finding that having something that's walkable, having a downtown that has some vibrancy, having a community that you have here is becoming more important rather than I get my car out and run. What do you predict? And what will you do about it? The future is yours, in your hands. What do we have? Oops. That's more the challenge. I hope I didn't ramble on too badly. Questions? Comments? Or you got to find some more cake out there. What do you see as the future? Yes? Oh, you were out in the boonies. mean to tell me that you think that there should have been some kind of urban design district or urban design commission to dictate the taste of everybody? At that time, there was not a urban design commission. There was no homeowners association that dictated the taste, thank goodness. And you also had, so this is, count these flinty conservative Evansvillers that were saying, you're going to tell me what to do? No, it was not a matter of asking permission. Other than the gossip, you had to probably confront the gossip mill. How could they build something that didn't look like a church? So it'd be more gossip mill than a village or city dictate. Good question. Or do you think they should have had their urban design commission dictating the taste of the next building? Thoughts? Yes, sir. Oh, that's usually, that should have been, and I believe was discussed. It did not, I don't think it happened. There was, I think, some desire to maybe be heading east, to continue the addition east, and or possibility of continuing education wing to the south. But that I don't think it was quite as flexible as it could have been. It's not as flexible for that. One would have to be, if you had the room to the east, you can see some of the classrooms could be marching down that way, but there's not a great deal of room. But thank you for bringing that up, because you should be, if you are doing something, don't design something that's going to be perfect. That is never should be and never will change. Never do that. Never get caught in that trap. Always have something that's going to be flexible and changeable. There's a budget. There's always a budget, and yes, they came with a combination of that. We need, we want, we have these resources. There's a couple of things when you're, as the architect, I get the request of, I want this, what's it going to cost? I have this, what can I get? There's always that combination that's in there. So yes, there were limitations. There's also demographic limitations. While Evansville has grown dramatically, it was not really looking to grow that much then, but it sure has. I mean, you're now 8 blocks. This was cornfield across the street. You're now 8 blocks of housing to the west. Big contrast. Oh, now you're really putting me on the spot. I don't remember. Maybe I'd have to go down and look in the basement. Is there, why didn't it? Okay, that's what I mean. Under the narthex, does it go underneath the narthex? I think you just answered it there. Would have to have built a tunnel of some sort. Oh, every church should have a tunnel, a crypt. Anything else you can put me on the spot on? That's it? Okay. Well, thank you for letting me bore you with times gone by. But I'm really looking forward to that next group, that next church council, all those young kids that you've just elected on the council that's looking to their future and saying, what are we going to do? How can we make this better? Or how do we keep what we've got and make it better?